Let's see. I'm going to tell the story of Spring Boy and Tipi Lining Boy. We, in our midst, we have heroes that destroyed some of the dangerous, uh, powerful beings that were on this earth that were destroying my people. And in telling the story, some of the things that happened to them, I find that they are real objects. For instance, there is that hole on the Bighorn River where a lot of animals fell in, and that's they described that as a big buffalo bull that swallows people. And then another thing, like the tree that falls on people. There's a real area in the Yellowstone Park where trees fall on people. Many people are killed there by trees falling on them. And then the canyon in Yellowstone Park also, they say that it used to be uh, uh, widen up and then smash people together as they were trying to cross it. So they are real things, that happen, but they are told in uh, in a simplified version. And so we have stories that 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 we say that we can overcome these bad things, and to give us encouragement, I guess. And the story of Spring Boy and teepee lining starts out with a young man who just recently had married, and uh, maybe jealousy or something, made him camp alone. They didn't camp with the rest of the people, and they camped by themselves, and there was a nice spring and a nice creek where they were camped at, and and so the young lady was already carrying a child. She was pregnant, and her husband would go out hunting every day, and it seems like they were camping in one place, and which does not coincide with that our people who moved camp every day. They stayed in this one camp, and the man would go out hunting every day, and the woman would stay home and do her chores and sew clothing or tanning hides, and then one day when the man went out hunting, an old woman uh, came to her and asked her for something to eat. And she dressed herself real poorly. Her clothes were ragged. Her hair was unkempt, and she looked very pitiful. So this woman took pity on her and gave her some food. And the woman, whenever the young lady was watching her, she would eat naturally. She would eat naturally and slowly. But as soon as she walked away, she would gobble up the food as fast as she could. And so this went on for quite some time. Uh, and then finally, this woman wanted to tell her husband that she was being visited by this old woman, and so she tied a feather in her teepee to remind herself that she was being visited by this old woman. But whenever her husband came home, she would forget. She would forget that this woman was visiting her. So finally, one day, when this old woman came and the young lady was about to give birth, the woman said, one of the things that I like to do to help young ladies have children is that I like to have them lay down and then eat my food on their belly, put my food on their belly, and they have an easy time of childbirth. And so this woman lay down on her back and put the food on her belly. And the woman ate up the food. And then she took out her knife and cut open her belly and pulled out, she had twins, and pulled out two boys. And the woman had died. So she took these two boys and threw one into the spring that was close by. And she took the other one and threw it behind the teepee lining. The woman knew that the children were going to be powerful persons, that they had a lot of energy and power. And so when she did this, she went off. She went away, and then when the husband came back, he came back and looked for his wife, and he couldn't find her. And before the woman left, she propped up her body with a short teepee pole, and so she looked like she was standing there. And she went over, when he went over there, and the woman fell down, and he knew that she was dead. So instead of burying her, he took her to a tree and laid her on a limb, there and covered her up with buffalo rope. And he came back and he stayed at, instead of moving, he stayed at the same place. And he would cook himself something to eat, and he would eat every evening, but he would be gone all day. And in the meantime, the two boys started to grow real fast. They became young boys. But they stayed away from their father. They would come out when he was gone, but they stayed away from their father. And then one day, the man felt so sad that he started to cry. He started to cry and wanted his wife back. He said and started calling her name. And then he heard a voice behind the teepee lining. And he said, this voice said, "Don't be so sad. I'm here. I'm here with you. You're not alone." And so the man wanted to see who was speaking to him. But the boy behind the teepee lining would not come out. And he said, "If I come out, you won't harm me. If you don't harm me, I will come out." And the man said, "I won't harm you. We will sit down and eat together." And so finally the teepee lining boy came out. And they ate together, and he didn't know that was his son. He took the boy and they lived together, and he would go out hunting on day, and the boy would come out and play. And then one day he went to the spring and saw this little boy inside the spring. But he had changed. His teeth were sharp and pointed, and they were sticking out, and he looked dangerous. And so he finally coaxed this other boy out when his father was gone. He wanted to play with him, but he was dangerous. He was trying to bite him and would not act like an ordinary boy. But the boy kept asking him to come out. And so finally this other boy, the spring boy, came out, and they learned to play with each other. They were playing with each other, and then teepee lining boy wanted this other boy to stay with him, because whenever the father came, he would jump into the spring and would not show himself to the father. So teepee lining boy devised a plan. He told his father to go and kill some buffalo bulls and take the hardest part of the bull and make gloves out of them and an apron to cover his body. And he said, "We need these things. There is a little boy inside that spring, but he has sharp teeth, and he doesn't want to be seen by anybody. So I'll coax him out, and then when he comes out, I'll hold him down as best as I can, and then you come and help me, and we'll make him stay with us." And so one day they did this. They coaxed him out of the spring, and they got him, and even though he was fighting and biting them, They held him down, and then the boy settled down, and finally the three of them were living together. They were living together, and the father was satisfied with them. He was happy now that he had somebody with him. But in some evenings he would cry for his wife. And the little boys were also sad. They didn't want to listen to him crying.